Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another Motion.io live stream. This week, going to be talking about a couple of updates we've made to the platforms, but also be answering and responding to any questions that you might have live on air here. So please, whether you're watching us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, go ahead, type those questions in the chat. I will be answering all of them as we go through today's content. So, with that, would love to know, how's everybody doing this Friday? Where are you tuning in from? I am here, if you don't know, I haven't watched one of these before. We're located in the Front Range of Colorado. So today I'm working from home, hosting this live stream from home, but our office is right down the road in Louisville, Colorado. So yeah, go ahead, hit the chat. Tell me where you're tuning in from today. I would love to hear from you. It's a good way to, get the reflexes going. Because I love questions and I will, like I said, answer every single one that comes in. That said, I want to talk about some of the updates that we have made to the platform this week. And the way we are going to do that is how I always like to start these live streams. We'll go ahead, pop in and take a look at the Motion.io changelog so you get an idea of what we're going to be talking about today. Another thing I'll point out while I get this going here is I am also going to, this is going to be like a true live AMA. So if there's things that come up as we go through the content of today's webinar, please ask away, like I said. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at our changelog here. So a couple of things that we have released this week. This was a little bit of a smaller release, but the first thing that we will cover here today has been heavily requested, especially by our longer term sort of power users. And that is repeatable form field groups. And I'm going to show you how this works in just a second, but to explain why this is cool and the problem that it solves is a lot of times our customers have questions that they're asking businesses and people completing forms. And on the front end, there might be multiple things that you need to collect. So a great example of this is addresses, right? You might be asking a client for all of their different business locations. Let's say they have a franchise and you're working with them, running digital advertising for them maybe, and you want to know all of their various business locations. With repeatable form field groups, instead of having to create individual answers for every single address. So for example, you have to guess, hey, I think they might have 5 addresses. That's how many I need in the field or on the form. You can just set it up once. And what these repeatable form field groups will allow you to do is the client can add as many of those addresses as needed. And I'll show you how this works in just a second. Another thing that we released this week is better visibility for embedded content in tasks. Another little pain point that we identified here is that when you use Motion.io's embed option, so maybe you're embedding a calendar link, some other app, some other website in a task, you want the client to access it. If you would do that, it would kind of just go to the bottom of the list previously. Now we surface your embeds to the top of the task. And this is really useful, especially for walkthrough videos. So for example, if you're embedding a Loom video, that Loom video will appear at the top of the task. And then maybe below that, you ask the client to proof something or leave the feedback from something on something. And you want to make it so that they are able to watch that and then complete the rest of the task. So that's another change that we've made this week. We'll also circle back on some updates that we shipped last week, which are project health scores, and then emoji reactions for activities and comments. That said, we don't have to get to this. I am totally cool if you guys want to ask away, if you want help setting up a workflow or something, happy to go into detail there instead of circling back on our stuff from last week. Actually, in our live stream last week, we even went through every single setup step of one of our newer users' workflows. That's something I'm happy to do on this live stream again here today. It was really cool. It was a newer user who was using us to do basically sales and marketing systems that's sort of service that he's offering to customers where they'll go in, they'll set up their CRM, they'll build a repeatable marketing process and system. But he was asking, hey, how can we use these offerings and how can we get our clients on motion.io. So that's where we can deliver these services to them. And we walk through 2 different templates of how to set that up. So if you are interested in something similar or you have just any other questions, please let us know. Write in. Happy to answer anything you might want me to talk about. With that, let's go ahead and let's jump in to our first release from this week. And I'm going to talk about our repeatable form field groups. So I'll pull up my motion.io account here. And let's switch over to my other tab. So I am in here. If you're unfamiliar with the screen, this is motion.io's forms library. This is where you can create new forms, but you can also, so you can either use the create button and just use the drag and drop builder, or you can use motion.io's AI form builder, enter a prompt, and have motion.io build out that form for you. So in case you haven't used this or haven't seen this before, I'm going to type in a couple of words here just to describe a form to get going to show you our repeatable form field groups question. And Tanya, thanks so much for your question. I am going to go ahead and respond to that in just a second. We'll talk about repeatable form field groups here, and then I'll dive right into that. So let's go ahead and I'm going to enter in a prompt here. Let's keep things simple. Create me an onboarding form for my digital marketing business. And this is just an easy example. So this is what I'm going to run with. I'm going to tell the AI that I work primarily with franchises. So, okay, let's go ahead and click create. And this is going to think for a second, and then it is going to spit out an initial version of my form. Okay, cool. So I have my form here that I had the AI generate. One of the things I noticed here, so we have this location field already. I'm going to go ahead and drag this to the bottom. Just to get this, make this a little simpler. Okay. And so this is just a standard field right now. So previously, like if I knew that my client had 5 different locations that I needed to collect an address from, I would maybe have to duplicate this 5 times over and over again. But instead, what I can do now with our repeatable form field groups is if I select this field group option, I'm going to go ahead and delete this. I won't be using this anymore. I'll enter a label for this, and we'll call this please enter the address for all of your franchise locations. And let's say this was, something like a Subway or something where they had multiple locations in different towns and stuff. So what I'm going to do now here is I'm going to add just a couple of quick fields. So we'll call this street address. Add another field for city plus state. Whoops. And then finally, we'll just do zip code. Okay. So this is what a field group is going to look like when it's set up. And on the front end, and you'll see how this works in just a second, but what the client is going to be able to do is they'll be able to add as many fields as needed and sort of run this back over and over again and be able to enter, all 5 of those addresses. And it's kind of hard to understand maybe in the abstract, but I'm going to go ahead and show you exactly what this looks like on the client's end. So I'll go ahead and save this. And then let's go ahead and let's just, I'm going to go into one of my example projects here. And I'll just attach this quickly to a task. I know this project, they've already completed an onboarding form in already, but just pretend that isn't there. So complete onboarding form. And then I'll go ahead, attach my form directly to this task. I'm going to add a client here. And whoops. Realize I hadn't added a client to this yet, so let's just go ahead and do that now. Okay, we can use Jim Jonathan here. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and preview the portal. Let's also activate this task. Be sure to do that. Okay, and now I'm in here in the client's view of the portal. And in my onboarding form, you can see when I scroll down here, whoops, this is the wrong form there. Realized I had attached the wrong form by accident. Where is that? Oh, there we go. Okay. All right, and now we have the correct form. Okay, so down here at the bottom, this is my repeatable form field group. This is the preview, so it's read only. But what this is going to look like for the client is when they come in to complete this form, they'll be able to add as many of these as they want. And let me actually just show you that here directly from the client's view so you get a good sense of what that's going to look like. By the way, if you haven't used this preview portal button, super handy feature that allows you to see exactly what a specific client will see when they access their portal. So definitely encourage you to try that out. Okay. And here is the client's portal itself where they can go in and they're able to then add this field and have it repeat as many times as needed. So cool. So to circle back on Tanya's question here, I want to double click on that. We are a publisher. What is the best way to communicate when a milestone has been completed, specifically when their book has been received in the warehouse? So that's a really good question, Tanya. And this is something that we have been thinking about quite a bit lately internally at Motion.io and trying to get a sense of, hey, how do we surface these like big goals in the project? And it's some things that we have some ideas on that we're going to be working to improve. But I will say right now, we do offer you a great way to do this. What I can do here is let me just show you with your specific use case, like how you might do this and what this would look like. What I would recommend is most likely setting that up as a stage. So specifically a stage for the book being received in the warehouse. And I also see we have Stephanie joining us. Stephanie, hello, how you doing? And let me go ahead. I'll show you how I might set this up. So this is going to be a very quick example project. And actually, let me do this as a template. And so bear with me. There's not going to be all of the details, but I do want to show it an example to you in a way that's super specific to your business. So let's call this book publishing template. Okay, so I'm going to set this up in a template. If anyone in the audience is watching, you're not familiar with templates, basically what they allow you to do is you can set up all of the tasks, all of the stages, all of the portal pages you need every single time you launch a new project. You can also have multiple different types of templates. And then when you go to create a project from it, everything's going to automatically populate in. I know, Tanya, you've been with us for a while. You understand templates. So let's go ahead and just dive in here. What I will do here is I'm just going to do this very quick, and I'll call this onboarding. I'm also going to add an emoji to this. If you missed this in our last week's update, we now support emojis directly in stages, in stage names. So a pretty nice little improvement. Helps you give clients, some more clarity, but also, just makes projects a little bit more fun, I think, with the emojis. So I have an onboarding stage. I have an editing stage. Maybe these aren't, the exact stages that you use, but this will give you a good idea here, Tanya. Editing. Okay. Let's do another stage. Let's call this one. Trying to find a good emoji here for this. Final approval. And then so what I would do here, Tanya, is so for this milestone, there's two ways you could do this. So you could either have your the sort of notification that the milestone has been completed where the book has been received in the warehouse. Book received at warehouse. Oh, spelled received there wrong there. Sorry. So this is one way. Oops. To do this, and maybe we can add a little emoji here. Book delivered at warehouse. Okay. Do a little celebration icon there. So two different ways you can do this. If you set up these stages, you could set this up as a stage by itself. And what this is going to look like then when I create a project from this template here. Go ahead, select my book publishing template. Okay, there we go. Perfect. So what I will go ahead and do is let me show all of these stages in the tracker. I didn't add any tasks to these. I could very easily, though, use our AI task builder to create some tasks. But just for the sake of keeping this short and sweet so we can move on to other questions, I'm going to go ahead and just create some test tasks. Call this onboarding task. Okay. Okay. So two different ways to do this now that you can see the progress tracker here. So we could either have this, the book being delivered or received at the warehouse. We could have this show up as a stage, but you could also, if you didn't want to include this as a stage, let's say I want to do this a little bit differently. I'll just go ahead and hide that from the tracker. You can also do this as a task if you'd want. And this is great because if you do this as a task, this is still going to notify the client. And you're able to, what you could simply do is don't even set a due date, don't set reminders. But once you would activate this, the client would know that the book has been received at the warehouse. Or you could even assign this as a team task. So kind of two different ways to do it right now. Would love to hear from you. Do either of those work for you? Does that make sense? Anything you want me to double click on? Happy to circle back there. But that gives you a good idea of like what this might look like. There's also ways that you could definitely set up an automation to do this. For example, using Zapier, you could set up a automation if you connect your email and you receive an email from the warehouse when the book was received. What you could do is you could have Zapier scan for those emails and then automatically trigger a task or create a task. So another option if you want to get a little bit more fancy with it. And I see that we have a question from Virginia. Thanks for writing in. Can we upload custom emojis? Virginia, this one is funny. So this is actually something that we were talking about that everybody on the team really wanted. It was just a little bit tricky development-wise, and we didn't want to slow down the release. It's something that I think we will very much so be doing in the future, but at the moment, unfortunately, we don't support custom emojis. That said, I can definitely see that coming down the line here. So, but right now, you do have options or do have the ability to really use all of the emojis. You just can't upload custom ones. But that is funny. We have a lot of custom emojis that we use even like in our team Slack. There's one now for I think almost every member of our team where we'll respond with a custom emoji of Sam or Matt or whoever on our team. Since we are on the topic of emojis, let's go ahead and I'll circle back into some of the emoji functionality that we included in our release last week. One of the things that I think is especially cool, and I'm here in the Motion.io message center. One of the things that I really like is that you can now go into tasks, and both you and your clients, and you're able to react with emojis. I think this is especially useful for clients because there's certain times where you don't always want to have to type out a message or something. I know I do this all the time on like my iPhone where I just want to react with something to say, hey, I got this, I saw it, but I don't really want to write a response because all I did was want to confirm that that message was received. So for example, when Mike Smith scheduled this call, I could just hit him with a thumbs up or even a heart if I wanted to. So you have the ability to react directly to things in this activity feed here. The activity feed of Motion.io in specific tasks. If you have been with us for a little bit longer, maybe you've been using Motion.io for a couple of months, but this has really come a long way. Our activity feed, it's way more powerful now. There's way more that you can do with it and see in there whenever you are drilling into a specific task and wanting updates and wanting to see what's going on. So for example, you can see now when people complete individual checklist items, when the task was set to active. So this is, in this example, this is a team task where we were launching some meta campaigns for a client. And I can see that, great, oh, this was set to active on the 16th. And then I completed these two checklist items and then marked it as complete. Also in the activity feed, it's comments and activity. So you are able to toggle between team only and client facing tasks. So this is a team task that's hidden from the portal. It's only going to be available to to my team. But if I did have a team task or that was shown in the portal. So for example, this launch LinkedIn campaigns task, this is currently being shown in the client portal just to let them know that we're working on it. But if I wanted to message one of my other team members privately, I could click this toggle, tag my teammate Sarah, and respond there privately. So if, let's say, I completed this, saying all done, 1, 2, 3, check off those checklist items, and we are good to go. So a little bit more about custom emojis and what those look like. Next, I wanted to show you the changes that we've made to our task embeds this past week. And this is the ability to embed things in tasks is not something that I feel like I've shown off or talked about in a while on these live streams, but it's super heavily used. And I will get into that in just a second, but I see we have a question from Lauren. Coming in late, but very excited for the form field groups. This is going to be huge for how we handle our forms. We have a ton of fields we've been wanting to group up like this. Amazing stuff, Lauren. That is so great to hear. Love that this update is making an impact. This was a really cool one for us just because it was something that took us, I think, a little bit longer to surface because we really had to understand the use case of like, hey, what is the best way to do this? But love that you're getting value from that. And thanks again for tuning in and asking a question. I have a question from Virginia that came in. I'm curious how the customer activates the additional fields in your example. As the customer, how do I add the next block of fields? Cool. So we can double click on that. And I can pause on showing you the changes to task embeds there. Just 1 second. I'm going to go ahead. Let me set up a new project. So I have this field or this form that I created earlier. And let's go ahead. Oh, realized I wasn't sharing my screen here. Let me pop that back up. Okay. So I have my form here. You can see I've added a field group. So what you do is you can go in here, and I'll make sure to update this. This is something you want to make sure you can do so the customer is able to add an additional address. Is you just go in here, click this settings wheel, and you click repeat field group. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead, save this quick, and let's show you what this is going to look like on the client's end here, Virginia. Okay. So back in my example project. Okay. Let me pull this up as if I am actually completing this as the client. Okay. So Virginia, I am here in the client's portal. And now in the form, I can go in here and I am completing this as Jim Jonathan, who is my fake client in this case. And I'll just leave a comment there just to give you a reference of who I'm talking about. So I can go and then as the client, fill this out. And this form operates all normally. But down here at the bottom, let's say this client had, 3 addresses. So they could do, this, fill this out. Denver, Colorado. Okay, so that's one address. Oh, but Jim Jonathan has 2 Arby's locations. Great. Because I've set this field group to be able to be repeatable, I can click add address. And what you'll see is I get another spot to enter an address. So let's call this is the motion.io office. Louisville, CEO, 82025. And you can repeat, and the client can then repeat this as many times as needed. So if they have 10 addresses, great. They could add 10 different addresses. If they just have one, they can leave this as just a single address option. So does that kind of clear things up for you, Virginia, where you know how this is going to look to the client and what they're able to do here? Let me know in the chat. So sweet. And then just as a quick recap here, the way that you do this in your form, just in case there's anybody joining us here late, you go in and you'll add a field group, and then you will click the settings wheel and click repeat field group, and then just enter, make sure to toggle this on. And when you do, the client is going to have the option to add another group. So really easy to use, really great way to keep your forms nice and condensed to avoid you having to do things like add, 20 different address fields, if that's the number that you might be collecting. So some nice quality of life improvement there for you. So cool. Now that we've talked about that, we've answered all the questions thus far, and keep them coming. I absolutely love getting these types of questions in, being able to show you around other stuff in motion.io. Now that we've covered all of that, let's go ahead and circle back to the changes that we've made to embedded content in tasks. So I'll go ahead and I will pop into just my example project I was working from earlier. And I'm going to click add task. So what do I mean by task embeds? Well, I will show you in case you're not familiar with it already. One of the coolest parts about motion.io, and this was a feature we actually released pretty early on, but is one that I, still love to this day, that we have this in here. And let me grab just a embed to show you just need my Calendly calendar here. So I'm going to grab the link here to my Calendly calendar, and I'm going to click the embed option. This functionality, the ability to embed things in tasks, you can use it a ton of different ways. We have a great article up on our knowledge base that I put together that shows you some different options to use this. But it's a really cool thing that you're able to do, because what you can do with embeds is connect virtually any other tool, bring that information into Motion.io without having to set up some complicated integration. All you got to do, and you saw me do it here, is simply click embed and then paste in a URL. It's as simple as that. And I will share a knowledge base article that talks about 6 ways to use embeds. In this article, we talk about calendars, reporting dashboards. This is a really cool thing you can do. Videos, external forms, all sorts of things. So I'll go ahead and link this in the chat if you need this. And I do see some other questions here. This one from comment from Laura, in 20 different conditional settings to keep the form view clean. Oh, wow. I am really glad that this functionality that we've added is going to allow you to stop doing that, because that is, that's a lot of conditional fields. And I can imagine how much troubleshooting you had to do. So it sounds like this has made a big impact already in terms of just cleaning up and simplifying the forms that you've built. Comment from Virginia. Cool. Yes, that was helpful. If I was receiving the detail, would the address show up as add address to? So in the form, I can show you even like what that's going to look like when submitted. I still have the form that I was partially completed. So actually, let me pop back in there and I can just show you what this is going to look like. So I'm once again here in my client's form in their portal. And I'm going to fill this out just to make it look a little bit more realistic. So just fill this out on behalf of Jim here. Just kind of entering some funny answers there to mark this as complete. So what you will see on your end here, whoops, need to share that screen again. So you'll see on your end here, Virginia, is you can see in my project, I've gone ahead, I have completed this form as if I was Jim Jonathan. Gonna pop back into the back end of my Motion.io account. And what you'll see, okay, 1 second here. Sorry, it's always hard when I'm pivoting between like the client view and actually doing things as them, and then going back into the admin view. It takes me just a second to toggle between them. So this is what it's going to look like here, Virginia. It's not going to be address 1 or 2, but you'll clearly see each of these, each of the addresses. When you download it as a CSV, let me see what that is going to do. So I'm going to download this real quick just to see what this will look like here. And 1 second. So if I download that as a CSV file, which we do have this handy little option down here, if you haven't used this, you can download forms as a PDF or as a CSV file. Let me go ahead. I'll pop this up in Google Drive so we can check what that looks like. And I would love to know from you, Virginia, is it important that that's like 1, 2, for example, for first, second address? Let me know what you're trying to do with that information, and I can provide some additional guidance or clarity there. Okay, so what I'll do here, let me just go ahead, import my CSV that I just exported. Yeah, so what you'll see in the CSV is it's just going to go question by question. At the moment, it doesn't look like we split that up into like address 1, address 2. I think that's a good idea and something for us to definitely consider. But at the moment, we just have that as like separate fields each time. I was talking about retrieving the data from custom fields. Oh, thank you so much for the clarification there. Okay, so if we're talking about custom fields, then that's a little bit different here. Yes, I use custom fields in internal tasks to retrieve the customer responses for specific to the internal task. Gotcha. Okay. So at the moment, unfortunately, the form field groups aren't going to work exactly as you might expect for being able to map those to custom fields. And the issue with that is just that with field groups, we don't know how many the customer is going to add. So it makes it hard to consistently map those things to custom fields. So you will notice that this actually doesn't even give you the option to map a field group to custom fields. If you are wanting to populate custom fields, you will have to use a standard form field at the moment. It's something that we talked about doing with our field groups, but there's a ton of different complexities there of like, I pointed out the big one already. That's we don't know how many different addresses a client will add. So it's hard to account for all of the different scenarios of like, hey, what do you populate as the address if they do it, if they send it in one time versus 4. So what I would say that in your case, you could use conditional if it's really important that you want to populate multiple different sort of let's stick with the address example. Let's say every time you want to catch up to 3 addresses, what I would definitely encourage you to do is just maybe make a conditional form field that uses a yes, no question. So in your case, you could do something like, do you have multiple locations? Yes, no. And if they say yes, what you could do, address 1, address 2, is you could set up all of these different address fields. Call this address 3. Okay. And then show all of these conditionally based on that question of do you have multiple locations? So a little bit of a workaround, unfortunately, but this should work for you. What you will do just to follow this example all the way through is I can do this and I'll go ahead and set conditions for this. So if do you have multiple locations equals yes, cool, we'll show this field. And then I can also, what you would need to do in your example here is you would also want to populate custom fields for each of these independently. So you want to set up, for example, 3 different business address fields where you'd have business address 1, 2, 3, so on and so forth. And we have a question from Lauren. I'm curious about using custom fields to pool clients' responses, similar to how Virginia is describing. Is there an article that describes that? Yeah, so there is. This is something we have up on our knowledge base right now. And I'm going to plug this into the chat here. Just give me a second. Okay. So I just added a article on how to populate custom fields via form submissions. But in case you don't know, or anybody else who's watching this doesn't know, like how to do this from beginning to end, it's actually super quick to be able to pull in client data from a project and use it to populate information. So what I can do is I can even just show you a quick demo of this live. I think that would probably be helpful since there were some questions about this. So the way that you're going to do this, if you want to populate custom fields, and I see we have a question that came in from Marlo. I will get to that one in just a second, but want to talk a little bit about custom fields. So what you do to set up custom fields, before we can pull data from form submissions into a field that we can reuse throughout a project, what you have to do first is set up your custom fields. So in this case, I'm going to go into my fields tab here, my settings. I have a couple of custom fields I've set up already, but let's just add a new one. We could call this, let's just say client birthday, just for an easy example. So now what I can do is in my form template, I can go in and let me add a quick question. I'm going to add a date field and I'll say birthday. Click the settings wheel here, and then I'll click populate custom field. And I will select that client birthday field you saw me just set up. Go ahead and save this. And then what's going to happen is, and I'll just show you this in this example project I had created earlier. So now when the client fills out this onboarding form, let me just attach it to the task here really quick. When the client fills out this onboarding form and enters their birthday, what it's going to do is it will funnel in to the client birthday field that I've set up. And what I can do now with this, so let's go ahead. I'll put this as 0630. I'm just going to enter this manually so you don't have to watch me fill out the full form. But what would happen is when the client submitted the form, this value would be automatically entered, even though I am doing it manually in this case. So I'll go ahead and save this. And then what you can see here is if I create a new task, and then I can add this client birthday field, and I'll just add some supporting text around it. Here is your birthday. Okay. So what happens is once that field populates, cool, I see June 30th, 1992, which is actually my birthday. And that is, the really short example of how you populate custom fields from form submissions. Hopefully that was helpful. So I see we have a question from Marlo here. I'll go ahead and dig into this. I have a lot of tabs on my portals. In the future, will there be a way to separate portals in categories? I have a SaaS company, i.e. portal applications, portal knowledge base. Okay, cool. So I see so this makes sense to me. Okay. Yeah. So this is something that we're thinking about, of ways to better structure that internally. Yes, there absolutely will be, but I can give you some tips here, Marlo, to just clean things up a little bit in the meantime. So let me go ahead, bounce back into my Motion.io account. One thing that you might consider for projects that have a ton of different tabs within them, and what Marlo's talking about for anybody who doesn't know, in your Motion.io projects and templates, we give you the ability to set up portal tabs, which display for your client in their portal when you invite them to the project. So in this case, let me just go ahead. I'll add a couple of different ones. Call this calendar. I'll add another tab here. Let's just embed a video quick. I'll embed one of our YouTube videos here, just to make this as close to reality as possible. Whoops, got to grab the embed code for that video. Okay. So one thing that you could consider here, Marlo, is you could split up your projects into one project that was primarily resources and then the other one that was actual stuff that they need to do. So for example, I could have this. Let me duplicate this template here quick. I'm going to rename it. So I'll call this for the client knowledge base. But then we'll also have a project, which I've already created, which is our sort of SaaS onboarding project. So what's this going to look like to the client if we have two projects? Well, I'll show you here in just a second. So I'm going to select Mike Smith here. He's not on any projects at the moment. And we'll go ahead and get him added. Okay, so I'm going to just create two quick projects. Whoops. So we'll call this one application, exactly to use your example there, Marlo. I'll select my SaaS onboarding project, create project, and let's just quickly add a stage. So I'll add a task. Okay. And then I'm also going to create another project here. And there's a way that you could automate this, but just to show you a very quick example. Also going to add my knowledge base project, which includes all of those tabs with the various stuff within their portal. So I'll call this knowledge base. And now let's go ahead and invite my client here so we can show you what this is going to look like to them. So got Mike Smith here. So I'll add him to the application project as well as the knowledge base project. Go ahead and click save. And so what Mike Smith here is going to see when he visits his portal, and let me just go preview this on his behalf. This is another way that you can get to view a client-specific portal. So cool. What this is going to look like, and this is like, I think does a really good job of cleaning up the tabs a little bit here, Marlo, because what's going to happen is you have two clearly separated projects. So you have the knowledge base project, and you could just leave this blank, just like don't add any tasks to this. But then below it, this is maybe where your client will actually go to complete things in the project. So that's a good way, I think, and a quick option in the meantime to kind of split things up, clean up your portals a little bit. Of just have, if you have a ton of stuff in the knowledge base that you're adding clients to, just go ahead and, split that up, break it up into a separate project. You could even hide it from a client after a certain point. If, they weren't going to need this long term, you can just remove them from that project. So hopefully that helps. Let me know if you have any other questions about that. That said, great question. And that is something I will also log as a feature request. Is just, I think, the ability to add additional information, but keep that sidebar nice and clean is something that we're going to be working to improving. But for now, this is I think a really great solution to split things up into categories in Motion.io for your clients. So with that, I've gotten through everything that I want to talk about here today. If there's any questions, I'm going to hang out here for a couple minutes, and I will answer those just because I always stay on these things, to the top of the hour or until questions stop coming in. So if you do have other things that you want to know, please write in. Happy to answer them with our final 8 or 9 minutes here. With that, though, I also wanted to tell you that I've been doing these live streams every single Friday for almost, what's it been? 4 months now. But next week I am going to be out of town. So there will not be a live stream next week. But I do look forward to seeing you the week after that. I love doing these things. It's fun to chat with all of you. Fun to be able to show you everything new in Motion.io. We're also working on some really cool stuff on our end. One of the big things that I will give you the bonus of knowing about because you took the time out of your day to come on and join me for an hour is invoicing. We are working on native invoicing functionality right now in Motion.io. This has to be one of the most highly requested features from our customers. Really since the beginning, but it's a really big project. It's been in development for a couple of weeks. It's going to be a couple of weeks more, but just to let you know, native invoicing and payment functionality is coming to Motion.io. We're really excited about it, and we can't wait to share it with you. With that, I hope everybody has a great rest of their Friday and a great weekend. I'm going to log off here a little bit early just because I think we've answered all the questions. I haven't seen any more come in, but looking forward to seeing you on the next one, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye, and best of success to you and your business.